Hello and welcome to Counterpressed on The Ringer and Spotify. I'm with Gilly, Flaherty and Jessy Parker-Humphreys. On today's show, we talk about Mary Earps versus Hannah Hampton, the big story of the weekend. We'll also talk about Chelsea getting yet another win at the top of the WSL table and touch on a team that are making waves, Aston Villa. They got a point yesterday, but they've certainly been making people take notice. Guys, I know people will be expecting us maybe to talk about the football, but I think on today's episode...
Do you think anyone's expecting us to talk
maybe
about
they're
the
not
football?
then. It's not going to be a usual episode where we maybe break down as much football as per our usual Monday eps, because today the big story of the weekend is not a result or a performance from any team or player. It is the drama and discourse of... Mary Earps. We are, of course, going to be talking about her book on Thursday for the latest edition of the Counterpress Book Club. So I don't think we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the book outside of the extracts that have already been published, because also that's embargo until Thursday. But we got to talk about the drama today and we'll get into it. But it does feel rare that we have a discourse takeover quite like this, Jill. It was everywhere and anywhere over the weekend.
Yeah, and to be fair, I weren't the last to hear about it because normally I am.
For once, Gilly was on Twitter actually having a look.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you give us the heads up in the group, but I had a little look on there and then I just couldn't really believe it, in all honesty, because I think even when I don't think I was on the pod after Mary announced her retirement.
No, I think it was just our pre-Euros apps.
Yeah. So, and I was a bit like, I felt like, in my opinion, if that was me playing, like, I would never have retired, personally, before the Euros, because I think as a player, I was always raised and I'd learned from people above me to sort of, your reputation is sort of everything in women's football. And I could realistically, I think every player could, 99% of them, every time they left the club, they could always tell a story about leaving that club. Yeah, like there's stories that I could have said about when I'd left Chelsea, things that had happened to me, or when I'd left West Ham. Like, but you don't, because of your sort of your reputation. You want to maintain this image of you're being a professional, you know. And I just think the whole thing, obviously, the retirement just before the Euros happened, I felt personally badly advised, because I think, you know, obviously it's a bit different because it's a goalkeeper spot, but that's me. I would have took it on the chin whether I'd liked it or not and been like, you know what, I'm going to be a good team player. I'm going to support. And look at what they've done. Obviously, they won the goal, but I'd have also thought of the financial side of it as well and looked after myself that way. So then obviously to have this now, and I get it because obviously the book's coming out. I said to Jessy, I don't even read, but... seeing that extract, it just makes me want to read the book. So can you amount of people that probably wouldn't have read it?
I'm not a big reader either, but I've been flicking through that book. We're going to get obviously stuck into the nitty-gritty of this story. But speaking of reputation, you finally brought in some merch for us.
I did.
Finally, long awaited. So there's a bit of herstory with this one, because you brought in one of your England caps.
Yeah.
And tell us why it's a special England cap.
Because it was the She Believes tournament. I think it was my second one. And we was playing against Germany and scored an own goal. And then I got subbed off afterwards. So
it's so perfect. It is so perfect.
I think it'd be a special one to bring in.
It's a real special one. And thank you so much that we can have it there. It's brilliant. And also a shirt.
Yeah. I didn't get many that were low numbered like that. 6. And I gave it a wash. Didn't give it an iron, but I gave it a wash.
And what game's that from?
I don't know if it's in the net. Obviously, I only got 9 caps, so a few of them were like high numbers.
Yeah.
Which means that you don't really.
It's lovely. Now we've got
one
you.
of the starting ones.
You got you and Kate next to each other. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. Jessy, you've written a blockbuster piece which broke the internet yesterday on this very thing. How are you feeling about this whole drama this morning before we get into it?
Yeah, I mean, I just find the whole thing like quite embarrassing. ultimately, and like to a certain extent even like a little bit sad. You know, I wrote in the piece that, you know, it kind of gives like sort of spoiled kids tantruming, and I feel like that's sort of a line that some people picked up on, and like I wasn't really trying to be like particularly savage. It's just that's what I kind of feels like the energy is of this, like, look at me, like I'm the good guy, this other player's the bad guy. And I just find it like kind of crazy that you're like trying to air out someone's dirty laundry without even, you know, going into specifics. It's very like nudge, nudge, wink, wink, which I also find is bleak because it feels very much like then you're leaving like the reader to almost come up with like the worst scenario in their heads. And I just think it's really unfair on the other player who, you know, especially like having to go and play a game at 12 o'clock the day after this stuff is coming out. I agree with Sonia. I think the whole thing, very classless.
Well, let's get into it, shall we? Let's talk about what happened in Mary Earps' extract and what happened afterwards next. Okay, so it all started on Friday night.
Where was we?
Where was I on Friday night? Oh, I was at my friend's house.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember, there were messages flying in the group chat. I remember some things being shared. So on Friday night, The Guardian published an extract from Mary Earps' upcoming book, which we will be doing the book club on Thursday. And that extract details the moment she was told by Sarina that she wasn't going to be number one for the Euros. Then on Saturday morning, you get the follow-up interview in The Guardian with Donald McRae, who's sort of like the big interview guy at The Guardian, in which Earps talks a little bit about that, but it's kind of an overarching piece that goes alongside with it. So she talks about various different things, struggles with mental health, body image, alcohol, things like that, as well as what happened in that moment. We also, on the Friday night, get a Mary Earps coming out post as a kind of precursor to the book coming out, but it also feels like a bit of a distraction and a bit confusing. That also came out on Friday night. And then on Sunday, we got yet more extract in The Guardian, and that was around what happened at the World Cup, the Nike jersey, that kind of stuff. So with all of that, you then get Hannah Hampton playing on Saturday for Chelsea. So, of course, that then becomes the whole kind of drama because Sonia Bonpastor's asked about it. And within this extract, Mary Earps references bad attitude, bad behaviour, which she believes Hannah Hampton was rewarded for when she was named number one goalkeeper. And this also goes back to a 2022 piece, also in The Guardian, that detailed when Hannah Hampton was dropped from the England squad post-Euro 2022 for attitude and behaviour issues under Sarina Wiegman. Now, obviously, we know Sarina Wiegman invited her back into camp and she became the number one, had a brilliant Euros, and the rest is kind of history. But it caused a big drama, and it caused a big drama because it hasn't painted Mary Earps in a good light. And you kind of touched on it there, Gilly, because there are certain things which you do kind of take to your grave for the sake of reputation, legacy, and for the sake of your teammates. And talking about Hannah the way she did in this book did feel like a low blow. And I think to do it so publicly in a book that you've published, where I don't believe things can be taken out of context when you've literally written them down, it feels unfair, and it does feel like throwing someone under the bus a little bit quite publicly.
Yeah, and I think, you know, what feels particularly bizarre about it, you didn't even mention in your overview, understandably, because there's been so much going on, the Mary Earps Instagram statements of Saturday night as well.
I'm sure people would have gone and seen some of the extract, so I'm not going to read the pages and pages of things here, but let's reference what Mary Earps' response was on Saturday night, which I think I was watching Strictly at the time, when she posted on Instagram in response to everything that had kicked off. She said, "It's not as easy to be vulnerable and open as I've been in the book, and I understand that my honesty and rawness will divide opinion. That's okay. Everyone is entitled to feel what they feel. Things have escalated really quickly today. Women pitted against each other. It's gut-wrenching to be portrayed as someone you're not. I know that the negative is what gets clicks, but it's sad." And then it kind of continues.
It's giving, we're all trying to find the guy who did this.
I think that's the difficult thing, right? Is lots of players, understandably, and lots of people, when they do media interviews, they will sometimes get frustrated if they believe journalists have taken things out of context. The difference here is Mary, the ghostwriter, her team, the editors, they published this. They decided to put this out. There's nothing out of context. This is what's in a book.
It's like, it's a really, really long extract. It's not like The Guardian have like quoted through an extract as part of the article. It's like a whole page of stuff. And I think this is what I also find annoying is like, if you want to do this, and I'm sure it will help her sell a lot of books, even Gilly Flaherty's going to buy one.
Well, I'm hoping someone's going to buy it and then give me it after to read.
Even Gilly Flaherty's going to be sent the PDF once the embargo's been lifted. But like, if that's what you want to do and you want to generate the interest that comes with writing something explosive, to a certain extent, I respect that, because so many of these footballer books are normally very dull. So I enjoy the gossip. But you've got to take ownership for it. When I write my tell-all counterpress book about how Flo Lloyd-Hughes has bad attitude, I will come with the receipts. Because I feel like you've got to, like, if that's what you're doing, don't try this, like, then mealy-mouthed, like, oh, I'm so sad, and, like, trying to get the Be Kind crowd going on the, like, women versus women thing. You're the woman pitting yourself against the other woman.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I find really hard. And I think, without getting too philosophical, I think it's really unpacked what is so toxic about kind of corporate feminism and girl bossification, whether it's in women's football, women's sport, which I think suffers from it a lot. And I've spoken about this before, but just in general across like how people weaponize feminism at times to sell themselves, to create their personal brands. And I think Mary Earps has done that in a way really successfully and importantly at times. The whole thing with the Goalkeeper shirts was an example about that. It's probably not spoken about the fact that she was, I believe, an Adidas athlete at the time, and they weren't selling Goalkeeper shirts either. I'm not going to pour one out for Nike. It's Nike. But at the same time, do you know what I mean? It's like, I think it's hard for me to, like, if you're going to be so aggressive on what your brand is around empowering women, which is very much her brand, then you've got to live by that. And this is not empowering women. This is throwing your former teammate very loudly under the bus.
And your manager, which is obviously also what Bombastor touched on, like when she, in her comments after the Chelsea game. And I do think, the stuff with Hannah is, I think, pretty gross and poor form, but like to a certain extent I'm like, we've all been in work situations where for whatever reason you don't get on with someone, especially if you're competing with them. Like, I can see how you can end up with this bad blood. Now, would I go and write about it in a book? No, but like, fine. The stuff with Sarina I find almost even more bizarre, because I'm like, your whole career, the level you got to be at, the stuff you've got to do is thanks to that woman. Like, you owe that woman, like, pretty much everything, I would say. Like, I think people forget, like, where Earps was before Wiegman came in and, like, what she enabled her to do as a result of Euro 2022 and then the World Cup. Like, you're just talking about a goalkeeper who'd, like, bounced around a ton of clubs. Okay, she was at United and maybe, like, her profile would have raised by being at United, but that's the element that I find crazy. I think that is so disrespectful, to talk about someone who's like given you and enabled you to do so much, as if I don't know, that they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, so incident in question, which is what featured in the extract, is April 2024, when she was first dropped. Hampton was given the number 1 spot, and she said to Darren Ward, the goalkeeper coach, and Sarina Wiegman, "I don't get it. It's a qualifier match and bad behaviour is being rewarded." She said she felt it was unjust. It was a choice that went against my core values. I couldn't get my head around it because when my values were compromised, the strain always felt heavy enough to keep me up at night. When this kind of decision compromised my football, I was sleepless. And then Sarina, then it goes to April 2025 when Hampton kind of officially becomes the number 1, even though she was kind of already on that path. And Sarina said she's a little bit ahead of you, which is what Sarina had actually said publicly as well to the press at the time. It's nothing you've done wrong. And Mary Earps then says that she expected it. And obviously then we know she later retires just before the Euros. Gilly, I think you touched on it when we first started speaking about this as the kind of advising element, which I think is something that I think about a lot in relation to this, in relation to how any player handles these moments. And I think there was already a bit of a red flag for me when the response to not being number 1 before the Euros was to loudly retire. And as much as I think Earps herself in the interview on Saturday says that she felt like, people were speaking for her during that moment, there was a lot of false narratives. Again, I don't think you can say false narratives when it's quite clear the thinking behind that retirement in this book and in this extract about why you couldn't give any more because you weren't going to be number 1. So that gives all the context that people needed when that original decision was made in May 2025, earlier this year. So now I'm left with this, again, like you were saying, to loudly retire before a major tournament, before your teammates are going to try and go and do something together, and then loudly do this later in the year, I certainly wouldn't be advising a player to do that. I think it's reputationally really poor, even if you're doing it to sell books. I think, that's you got to understand the risk that comes with that. And now I think there was already, concerns with how it played out just before the tournament. And obviously, Mary Earps stayed pretty quiet during the Euros. Millie Bright went and did a podcast, which I think was interesting choice. But again, I just think it's people need to be advising people in the right way and think about their reputation on these things.
100%. And I think if I was an agent, I'm telling you this now, I would not be telling my players to go and do that. I think there's always, like Jessy said, with what football's work, yeah? It's your employee, it's your boss or whatever. There's always going to be difference of opinion, especially with managers. Yeah, managers are going to like other players more so than others. There's always going to be times in players' career where you're not playing. And it's about the way you handle those situations. I think it's always difficult with the goalie situation because there's only one spot and there's a lot of talk, off the pitch from media and stuff like that, where it's always the constant battle of number 1, number 2. You see it in the men's game, you see it in the women's game as well. It's never... You never really have it where number 1's number 1 and the number 2, 3 are just happy sitting there. There's always got to be that sort of ruffle feathers a little bit. I get it. If that's me and I'm sitting there with Sarina and she pulls me in, and I might not agree with what she said in the sense of she's saying the first bit when she obviously picks Hampton and then Mary says I feel like you're rewarding bad behaviour, yeah? That's a conversation. You might feel like that. I'd say to maybe Sarina, I feel like it's unfair that she's being picked ahead of me because of behaviour, whatnot, yeah? That's a chance for you to air it. If you're not happy about it, though, then you have to make that decision where you say, right, I'm going to either walk away with my head held high or I'm going to shut up, really, and I'm just going to get my head down. And this is how it was. When I was at Chelsea and I knew from probably the January, I think I tore my quad muscle, I knew that I was going to be gone by the end of the season. I thought, how do I want to play this out? Do I want to be sort of a player who sits there on the bench like this, looking like I'm not a good teammate? Or do I want people to go, do you know what? Even though Gilly's leaving, everyone knew I was leaving, she's been the best teammate possible. And even in that last couple of games when I needed to come in, I gave my all because I weren't having no one say nothing about me. Same with West Ham when I left there. I didn't want to leave West Ham. I wasn't offered a new contract. I still continued to play up to the last minute. And I think you could say so many things like about stories about you've gone through, but how players thought about me as a teammate, I cared more about that than anything else. And more about, because managers in the women's game speak. I didn't want no manager to go, do you know what, don't sign Gilly because if you don't play her, she'll kick up a fuss or she'll be this and she'll be that. So I think if Sarina's pulling me in before the Euros and going, listen, it's different because obviously it's a goalie position, but saying to me, Gilly, you're going to be the number 2 for the Euros. I'm going to go, all right, I don't agree with you, Sarina, because I think X, Y, Z, I should be starting. But being part of this team is more important to me. And listen, you retire yourself. What about if Hampton got injured just before? How many times have we seen it with players?
And we were saying that, and look, Keating had to step up the other night without any caps. And we said it in the whole build-up to the Euros. You know, like Kate was on a couple of shows as well. Like, there was a big question mark. Obviously, Hampton made it through and she had a brilliant tournament, especially in penalty shootouts. But there was a big what if. If Hampton got injured, you are throwing in kids or someone who hasn't got any caps either. I mean...
And you're also leaving, you know, even with, you know, Hampton obviously had tournament experience, but you're also leaving a goalie who's never started at an international tournament before. I mean, obviously their relationship had just totally broken down. So I do kind of think, given everything, I kind of think, thank fuck, Mary didn't go.
Yeah.
But, like, let's ignore that. And, like, if she maybe took the approach like Gilly's saying, like, what does it mean to have a goalie who's, like, been there, done that, who can, like, talk you through that and, like,
and
help
I think
you
that's
out?
what Sarina Wiegman referenced at the time when she wasn't happy, clearly, in the press conference straight after Earps' decision. And she kind of referenced the fact that she wanted that experience, she wanted that leadership. And I also think, you know, Mary Earps is a player who cares deeply about her personal brand and about, you know, her commercial opportunities. And being part of an England Euro squad is a huge commercial opportunity. You're better to be in than out, in my opinion. And I know, you know, Kate was on a few weeks ago when we talked about Millie Bright's international retirement, and she was very much of that player perspective of, if you can't be a good teammate, take yourself out of the equation. Don't push it. But I think you've got to weigh up and think about what the optics are of this and what it looks like if I'm in or I'm out as well.
And it's, you know, like Kate was saying with the Bright stuff, if you can't do that, you should walk. And that's what I feel. You know, clearly, I think it would have been a very bad idea for Earps to go to the Euros. But then I think of someone like Lotta, for example, and when she talks about the role that she knew she was going to have and she knew she wasn't going to play, and that's the 4th international tournament she's done that in, but she's like, I see myself as being able to do more than that. It's like, okay, if you can't do that, that's fine. And this is Earps' problem, now everyone knows you can't do that. And I think, unfortunately, you look like a dickhead. Because, okay, maybe it's good to assess, but, you know, when you're saying it's against your morals, so, you know, she's basically like, oh, Hannah Hampton being number 1 was against my morals and values. What? What does that mean? Like, and also the problem she then has, which, you know, maybe when she wrote this, what she thought was going to happen was, and they nearly did, but like that England would crash out and, you know, she would come away, you know, being able to be like, oh, look, they should have played me, blah, blah. Her problem is Hannah Hampton was kind of the star of the show. She's pretty much the best goalie in the world right now. And it's sport. No one gives a shit if you're a bit of a dickhead, which I don't even think Hannah Hampton necessarily is. But even if she was, let's take Mary's version of events at face value. Hannah Hampton's tough to work with, whatever. If you're the best at what you do in sport, nobody gives a shit. Because sport is about winning.
Yeah, exactly. Everything. You do the talking in the moment on the pitch. And there is something, the irony, Jill, of that image of Hannah Hampton at the Ballon d'Or ceremony,
So funny.
winning that goalkeeper award with Mary Earps having given it to her. I mean, a picture speaks a million words.
Well, it's so funny because we was laughing at it at the time. But
Yeah, but
now
now-
you've got all of this, it's even
But
funnier.
you know what, though? If that's me, yeah, and I've got an issue with someone like Hannah Hampton.
And I'm sure the list is long, Jill.
No, I love everybody. I would have said, I'm not putting myself in that position to hand that award over.
No, I agree with
I
you.
wouldn't have gone to it because, and I'd have made someone, whoever's representing her, come out with something in, I was already in another event or whatever, I was sick, whatever. Because then it's like, now obviously people are going to go back and see the images and then try and make something out of it. But what happened to the good old fashioned, if you got a problem with someone, have a chat with that, get him in a ring. Just have a chat with that person. You don't have to be the best defender, but when it comes to the amount of times in football teams that I've been in where I've had players in that team, not me. I've had players in that team can't stand someone else on that team, yeah?
It's classic.
But when you're there for that one job, you have that one focus, yeah? Whatever it be, to win whatever, or being at the team, like really, sometimes winning one a thing. But it was you're there with a combined reason. Once you leave that pitch, I don't need to talk to you. It's whatever. But what happened to the good old fashioned? If I got a problem with you, I'd say, listen, let's have a chat. Let's just air out all our differences.
It's not RuPaul's best friends race, guys.
This is not RuPaul's best friend race.
Like, I don't know if it was Megan Rapinoe or who else said you got to play like 11 best friends, but you really don't. And I think international football's a perfect example. You know, England men's team, famously it was the club cliques that brought them down, and, you know, Southgate did a lot to improve the culture, but there are cliques in every single team. Every single team.
But that's what I mean, like that's life.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I work in an office. There are some people who I'm more friendly with than others. It's not like I'm not saying I've got beef with people, but it's just like, naturally you're going to gravitate over time.
It's against my moral values to sit with the IT department.
Well, I'm actually having to hot desk at the moment anyway, so I can choose who I sit next to.
Ooh.
But do you know what I mean? Like, it happens at school, it happens at university, that's just human nature, and it's how you deal with it is what it says about you as a person.
Let's talk about Sonia's post-match comments. Jessy, you were there. So I was on Hannah Hampton watch, a.k.a. sitting behind the goal. And then Jessy went and did the post-match afterwards. So obviously Sonia was asked about the comments, and her response was pretty punchy.
I was gagged.
So I'll read out the quotes here. Okay. So she said, I think Hannah is fine. It's tough because Hannah is an athlete but also a person, and it's never nice to hear these comments. The only thing I want to say about Hannah is that since I joined Chelsea, she has grown so much. She's such a professional athlete and also a good person. We have a really good relationship together, and I want to show her my support in this situation. I just feel like with what I read in terms of comments coming from Mary Earps, it is not acceptable not to show respect to your teammate or your manager. We are talking about Hannah, but I'm also raising my voice for Sarina. I just think when you use some words saying something about someone who won the European Championship 3 times in a row, you should probably think about it before you speak. Hannah has been fine with us and all the club. Myself, the staff and the players, we're all behind her. If you look at what Hannah said in the previous comments about Mary Earps, then what Mary is saying about her now, one of them is class and Hannah is the class one.
Oh!
What was the reaction like in the press conference to that?
Well, it's kind of hard for me to judge because I'd been doing some other work bits. So I came in, the question had already been asked. So I sort of came in as Sonia's was answering.
Right.
So I was sat right at the back. So I couldn't see, everyone else was sat at the front. But
They were gagged.
I think everyone was gagged. I was literally there and then I was kind of realising that Sonia would be able to see me. So I was like, ooh,
Yeah, if that was me, I would be worried. My jaw would be on the floor.
Yeah, I mean, I've genuinely never, I think, heard a manager really speak that punchily about someone else, like someone outside of the club.
And also, it has to be said, something that's not about something on the pitch. You know, managers are quite punchy when there's an incident in a game and someone does a bad challenge and there's a bad injury or something.
Yeah.
They'll back their players a lot aggressively on that. But not something which is in the media discourse. You don't normally see managers or players react that punchy to that, and I think that was really interesting because her language was pretty strict. And I think, you know, the last line when she talks about, when you look at Hannah's previous comments, and Jessy, we were at the pre-Euros media day at St George's Park off the back of the announcement about Earps retiring, and Hannah Hampton faced a lot of questions, as she obviously knew she would, and I'm sure the comms team did right by her by prepping her, but she, you know, was very polite and complimentary of Earps and her legacy, especially around what she did for goalkeepers around the world. And, you know, that is Earps's brand. Earps liked to carry the fact that she made goalkeeping cool for girls and boys. And Hannah Hampton was very complimentary pre-Euros about that very thing, about the legacy she leaves behind, you know, like, you know, she did such important things for this team, etc., etc. I know it's pre-Euros and you got to think about what you say, but I think it shows a lot that she kind of, you know, took it on the chin and didn't air out anything in that moment and hasn't since.
Yeah, well, and I think the other thing is like, if all of this like beef between Earps and Hampton is like as Earps says, which who knows, but I'm sure Hannah's got plenty of stuff that she can say about Mary as well. Like, I know Mary's gonna like try and paint herself as a saint, but I don't believe that for 1 second, because I mean, like, look at all of the stuff that she's doing. But I feel like for Hannah, it's kind of like,
post the receipts, Hannah.
Well, no, I guess what's like, I feel sorry for her because in some ways it's a shitty situation because she can't do that, right? Like, she can't go and do all of this stuff that Earps is doing.
No,
she can't
the
go and do the press tour. But what's good for her in the other way is all she actually really needs to do is be quiet and smile. And Earps is digging her own grave.
The best thing to do is just be really quiet, play it cool, just let this play out. And Jill, this is only the beginning of the Mary Earps press tour. We've already seen, as of this morning, ITV News interview asked about Hannah Hampton. She's doing lots more media. I'm sure she'll be on the One Show because that's where everyone turns up. I know she's doing a podcast, not her own one, but that's probably coming soon. But like various podcast interviews. So this is only phase one. Like it's going to go on and on and on. And, you know, maybe if I was her team, for the sake, I know it's the book tour, but for the sake of this, I maybe would have said, sorry, we're cancelling a few bits and pieces, because the most important thing in PR when things are exploding is like, you kind of try and shut them down. You try and stop the story building. And sometimes if you just cut it, it helps it die. Well, this is going to go on and on and on.
I mean, I don't know what they thought was going to happen, because this was like the most predictable thing in the world. Like, when I got the book through originally, like, all of this stuff, I was like, this is going to be massive, because it was obviously going to be massive. But then when you see Earps's like statements on Instagram, you're like, oh my God, you really seemingly had no idea how this was going to play out. And like, when you're sort of floundering, saying like, look beyond the headlines, I'm like, I'd say just look at the headlines, because it only gets worse beyond them, you know? And it's like, oh my gosh, like, you really, really didn't think how this was going to play. And that seems mad to me.
Yeah, I just think I think what's nice is Sonia speaking up, because I think Hannah obviously is in a position where she can't really do what she wants to do or say what things she wants to say. Like, natural, everyone would want to defend themselves. So I think a manager taking that responsibility and taking that away from Hannah. But if I was representing Hannah, if I was her agent, I'd say, keep your head down.
Yeah.
Keep doing your performances, because if anything, this is all spinning in our favour anyway because of the way it's making Mary look. You just concentrate on yourself and let the football do the talking.
And 24 hours before, where was Hannah Hampton? Winning the Glamour Woman of the Year award. So
I have to shout out my favourite conspiracy theory that I was told over the weekend.
Yes, please do.
That this is all an attempt from Earps to stop Hannah winning BBC Sports Personality of the Year.
Because that's the real quiz.
Well,
not the Ballon d'Or,
but I do
none
think
of that.
I do think it's interesting because, you know, as you've touched on, Flo, Earps has prided herself on her off-pitch stuff as much as the on-pitch stuff. That's why we've got this extract about her taking on Nike and how apparently this was the biggest thing at the World Cup. Sorry, I'm still on Sweden-USA penalty shootout, Mary, but like, sure. But Hampton's also done all that, right? Like, she's kind of got awards for speaking about her stuff with her eyesight in the past. She was at the Glamour Women of the Year Awards on Friday, speaking there. She is up for these like big personal awards that exist, you know, sort of separate from the football stuff, which she's also winning because she's the best goalkeeper in the world. And I wonder how much that is also genuinely like animating this dislike a little bit, because that's what Earps wanted as well. It's not just her place in terms of the team, it's almost like her place in society. And I think, again, you know, I sort of referenced this in my piece, but it also comes back, I think, to the PSG move, which, again, I just think feels so silly. And I'm sure she's getting paid bonkers to be there. But it's like, you don't play for England anymore. You don't play in England anymore. Like, no one really talks about you, you know, because people don't care about PSG. They're not even very good. But, like, even if you look at, say, Stanway at Bayern or Lucy and Kira when they were at Barcelona, it just naturally does not get as much attention. You don't get as much attention if you're not playing in England. And I think all of that, like, that's why it feels like, please look at me, please look at me.
And also the context of her going to PSG. She wanted to move, she wanted to go to Arsenal. And that didn't happen. Yeah. And that was, you know, a whole drama in itself. So it feels like a lot of the last couple of years has been building towards this. And maybe it could have been avoided. And I think that's the kind of sad thing. And I just hope that, like, it doesn't, maybe it's going to get worse from here. I don't know. Maybe it is only the beginning, but I'm just like...
Can we also just talk briefly? Sorry, I feel like you maybe want to wrap up this conversation, but I do also need to talk about the random gay drop. Because that also made me laugh so much.
I don't even know where to begin with that. And I'm sure we'll get into it on the book episode on Thursday, because it's obviously in relation to that. So I don't know if it was a strategic... let's get ahead of the extract because now we realise it might, like, kick off. But
what was with doing a separate statement? Because in the book, it's, you know, it's discussed. So it's a bit like, you know, we've been speaking a bit about Alex Scott's book, haven't we, over the weekend, sort of like the similarities and differences between those two. And like, she obviously speaks about her sexuality, like, very openly in that book. But, like, why? Like, she didn't do, like, then a separate statement because it's like, it's already there. And I'm sorry, the specific wording just made me laugh so much, being like, Mary Earps is ready to tell BBC Sport that she is in a same-sex relationship. I mean, like, good for her. I'm happy that she feels like she can come out, but... yeah, wow. Strange.
There was just a lot
decisions
to unpack over the weekend. I don't think we've had anything that kind of...
If the gay thing was a distraction, it didn't work because, spoiler alert, loads of women's footballers are gay.
Yeah, I know. That's the other thing. It's not exactly groundbreaking insight. And yeah, I think it kind of feels meaningless to say, but like, Hannah Hampton had a good game on Saturday despite all the noise and hysteria and pressure, and I think that says a lot about her as an athlete, and I think she's shown that even with, you know, everything that she went through in the past and the stories that came out, etc. Like, she has done her talking on the pitch. She is the best goalkeeper in the world. That move to Chelsea has transformed her, and she is deserving of all these accolades. And
on that, on the being the best goalkeeper thing, you know, she plays in a different style to her. And I think that's, again, the thing that's like the rewarding bad behaviour, blah, blah, blah. It's like the difference between them as goalkeepers is really, really very, very obvious.
And that's in the extract. In the extract, it's referred to that Sarina says the distribution, and I think, like, closing on one-on-one, or, like, you know,
both
whatever,
of which are true.
Yeah.
Just anyone who's watched either of them play know that's true.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, the big thing Hannah's been able to add to her game is getting better, like, in terms of being able to make saves, you know. But everyone always knew, everyone said about her when she was coming through Birmingham, Villa, when she first got to Chelsea, like, this is a goalie who can play with her feet. And that's, like, one of the biggest assets you can have. Everyone knows that's the way people like to play at this moment in time. And I think that's, again, the thing that feels so bizarre about this, because this isn't a case of like for like goalies. You're very, very different goalies, and it's really obvious why Wiegman would prefer one over the other.
Yeah, I mean, this is only phase one, so we've got more to come on Thursday, and I'm sure there'll be more interviews to digest as well. But let's take a quick break, and then we're going to talk about Chelsea's 2-0 win over London City Lionesses next. Okay, so there was football on the weekend, apparently. Stamford Bridge, Chelsea beating London City Lionesses 2-0. All of the discourse was about the Mary Earps stuff, but all in all, it was like another kind of chalked off performance for Chelsea, in that there were nervy moments where London City Lionesses, frankly, could have scored. They had some good chances, and I know, Jessy, you thought, is this heading for a late 1-1? That late Sam Kerr goal was really important because it just it obviously secured the win, but it felt like, okay, like we can kind of re-announce ourselves here, other side of the international break. But again, it just comes back to they just keep manoeuvring, they just keep going, they just keep doing it, even when they're up against the wall a little bit in those moments.
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of re-watching the game yesterday, I do think London City Lionesses, maybe it's because I knew the result, but like London City Lionesses, there wasn't loads. Like Chelsea, I thought generally kept them at arm's length. I thought clearly.
Well, the chances that actually kind of London City Lionesses' best chances came from Chelsea mistakes.
Yeah, which has been a little bit of a theme. Obviously, we were back with the back three, with Bronze as one of the right-sided centre-backs, and Carpenter and Baltimore as wing-backs. And the opening goal obviously comes from both the wing-backs. I still don't love that formation. I don't really love the switching, and I think, you know, Chelsea feel like they have moments where they can be really aggressive, they can put teams under pressure, they can turn over the ball a lot, and then it feels like they have games where they can be quite passive. But the sort of caveat I always feel is like games after the international break feel like they can always go a million ways, and I always just want to like just win that game. It doesn't really matter what it looks like, just win it, because people come back in all kinds of situations. People have been travelling, some people have played loads, some people haven't played at all. So, you know, to that extent, I'm like, just get the win. But it definitely feels like Chelsea are like kind of teetering on like, at some point maybe these like not very convincing performances are going to tip. And obviously the thought of going to the Emirates next weekend with the unbeaten run in play, I'm feeling quite unwell. But that's fine. It's got to happen. We've got to play them at some point. I think that game's going to be really, really interesting because, you know, are we seeing a Chelsea that can raise their level in the games that matter? Or is this more, you know, is this sort of like poor performances, you know, the results are kind of hiding what's actually going on?
Yeah, and I think you're right about the international break, because I think all the typical big side suffered with that, maybe apart from Arsenal, but Leicester City were really poor. And I mean, Arsenal were missing so many players as a result of the international break and had to make a lot of changes.
Also, Arsenal are transparent queens with
I know, with their tweet around
tweet,
injuries,
yeah.
which was great. More of that, please.
Where's that coming from? Loved it.
But yeah, I think you saw it with United's performance and with City as well. They only beat West Ham 1-0. I think you saw there very much teams who, and I think, you know, Skinner referred to this in his post-match. He was like, we only really had one day on the training ground. Jill, what is it like as a player when you've got players coming back from international break, you're trying to regroup, you haven't really had time to prep, and you've got to then go in and face a team and you maybe don't feel quite ready for it?
Yeah, I mean, it is difficult because I've had the joy of being on both sides of it. So obviously going away, obviously, again, like Jessy said, you could be playing different amount of minutes. You might not play any games at all. You're still training hard. And it's full on, and then if you're travelling as well, you're coming back, you potentially lose that last day to come back, and then you might like have one session before, especially if it's a Saturday game too. And then when you're the player who's not gone away, you tend to, if there is a chance, to get a couple of days off potentially as well, which was always nice. But then it's also hard because you might have lower numbers, and then you might have, say, some of the kids coming up to train with you, and it's more, you can't really prep for anything because majority of your squad's away. So then it's just basically the fitness side of it, making sure that I mean, they're hard international breaks because you would probably run a lot more than what you would obviously during the season. So, and then you get together for one day and you're just trying to cram in really what's the most important part of it. So it is difficult and it's hard. And it's sort of one of those ones where you think, especially for the teams who desperately need them points, it's sort of, however we win, it don't really matter. It might not be pretty. It's just finding a way to win and getting the points.
You were at Villa yesterday. That was a really fun game. Villa 3, Everton 3. Late equaliser for Everton. I feel sorry for Villa because they definitely thought they'd done enough, having gone a goal down as well, to swing the game back in their favour. But all in all, I mean, it's an important point for Everton because they've had a real kind of stop-start, not great start to the season. But I think everyone feels like Villa are going in a fun and exciting direction with a great coach, some good recruitment, and like the signs are there that everything's moving in a good direction.
Yeah, and I mean, the first 10, 15 minutes or so, Everton could have probably been 2, maybe 3-0 up. Villa changed their shape, and I think that's because they didn't have Grant available. And Salmon and Daly were on the bench, so they went with a 2 up top, Hansen and Mullet, who just really for, I'd say, 35 minutes just was non-existent really.
I think Georgia Mullet's first WSL goal as well.
And she got a first goal, and she got an assist as well. And she done really well. She was, a lot of the time, she was making the runs. Obviously, because naturally when you have, say, Grant, Sam and Daly and all that, especially with Grant, you know, she's got the pace. They didn't have that outlet. So obviously they went to wing backs, and then Maritz was quite deep in the first half. But towards the end of the first half, she then started to get forward a lot more. But no, I think with Villa, it's frustrating for them, I think, the way they conceded their third goal, because it was just poor defending, really. I think players were running away from the ball, and Gago was allowed so much space in the box to win the first ball and then put the second ball away. But they played really good football. And I did think as well with Everton, I think Everton played really good football at time. But they rely a lot on Gago to get do something.
It's been strange how little she's played, because I think when you see her in that team, it's like she just puts herself about so much, but it feels like we've barely seen her.
Yeah, like yesterday she was pretty much doing a lot in isolation. So yeah, but in regards to their build-up play, like Everton played really well. I just think in the final third, it just weren't really happening. They defended a bit better. But in regards to Villa, like Villa looked the stronger, I'd say, out of the two. From like the end of the first half going into the second half, but they just couldn't hold on to the win. But yeah, no, I thought it was going to be honestly, I thought it was going to be like a 0-0. So I was glad to see 6 goals.
I feel like Villa are this season's hipster's choice. Maybe Brighton were the equivalent last season in Vidicic's first season, but Natalie Aurora came in so late in the season, and she had quite a rough start when she came in January. Like, it took a while for her to get her first win, but now I feel like we're seeing the benefits of like a full pre-season, bringing in some of the players that she wanted to bring in. Obviously, we've seen this emergence of Lucia Kendall and getting her call up to England, starting in that Australia game, getting player of the match, you know, really kind of leading in England's numbers that night. It feels like, for me, they're the interesting club this season that you want to talk about, because I think and in their performances against some of the top teams, Chelsea, against Arsenal, like, they're the team that I think are like making people stand up and take notice a little bit.
Yeah, I think the thing that sometimes frustrates me is just a sort of lack of clinical ability. I know they scored 3 goals yesterday, and they were probably unlucky in that game against Leicester, which I think finished 0-0. But yeah, I think if they could just get like a more clinical finisher. Obviously, Daly's done that in the past, but it's been a while since that kind of crazy season. Grant, Salmon, like, they both look good in their moments, but they just don't score enough. I think that's kind of what they need to like really take it to the next level, because I think sometimes they're sort of flattered to deceive a little bit. But I feel like that whole selection of teams are quite interesting. You know, I think Brighton haven't really kicked on as much as I'd have thought. And I think sometimes actually looking at that squad, I kind of feel like I want to see a bit more from them. I feel like Villa's squad is still maybe that like step back. Spurs, I think, have obviously had a great start to the season, but I think they've maybe been a bit lucky in terms of some of their overperformance. And I wonder if we'll see them sort of have a little bit of a downturn as the season goes on. But yeah, I think, you know, there are a lot of teams in the league at the moment who I feel like are interesting, but I'm just like, I just want that like little extra bit, I think, to like feel like they're turning into a good team rather than being a team that sort of like might get a good result or might put a good performance in, but they don't follow it up the next week, you know. I think that's...
Well, I think the biggest marker for the competitiveness in the WSL has been the level of performance from other teams against the big teams, but those performances haven't necessarily resulted in big shock results, and that's probably the last gap that needs to close. Is we're seeing a lot of teams come to Stamford Bridge, come to the Emirates, and give teams a really tough game, but that's the difference between giving them a tough game and then getting the result to show for it. Like Villa were very close to getting a result against Chelsea. They did get a draw against Arsenal, but it's like, Jessy, where is that final step going to be where you're not just looking good, but you're actually like securing those results?
Yeah, and I think, United are an interesting example. Like Brighton United was the kind of game I sort of mainly watched yesterday. Although I did enjoy the Sky Sports multiview, which I hadn't tried before.
I do love a multiview.
Watching Jess Park play yesterday, who I thought was exceptional and is obviously having an incredible season. And United, firstly, have had a number of very good seasons. They're clearly far ahead of these teams. But I think they're an interesting use case for those teams because, they have sort of, had a path where they've not been at the top for years and years. They've had to come up from the Championship. They've equally not spent tons, compared to the Chelsea, Arsenal, City trio. But I think you can see, like, with them having that player who sort of brings star power, and obviously they've had, a variety of players over the years, and they've got the benefit of, in players like Toon, like real sort of hometown players, and that's what the United brand gives you. But I think when you see how Park just elevates his team in terms of being able to take over games, that's what these teams are still missing, I think, and that's what, you want them to be able to take the next steps and be able to move in the transfer market to bring in players that are going to do that. And I think Park's an interesting example because everyone knows that Park was, is a talented player. I don't think anyone doubted that. I don't think many people thought she was going to have the season she is having. I know it's kind of descended online into this, like, who got the better deal, Park versus Clinton. I still think, when Clinton gets fit and pays for Man City, I think it's a deal that really worked well for both sides, basically. But, that opportunity to bring a player in who's talented, but maybe for whatever reason hasn't had the, hasn't been in the right environment to truly show it. If you can give her the keys, like Park has in United, that it really pushes you on.
Yeah, she's absolutely levelled up that team and was a game changer yesterday. And it's in all the games as well, even when Park hasn't started, as soon as she comes on, it's just like the game completely changes. Right, we'll wrap it there because we've got more Mary Earps chat to come on Thursday. And that was the bulk of this episode, which I'm sure people would have been expecting because it was the main topical conversation. So sorry if you came here for analysis of Arsenal, Leicester City.
But you can go to the cutback read that analysis.
So true, actually. Thanks for the plug. You can go to the cutback if you want to get analysis of how Arsenal beat Leicester. Spoiler alert, Sarina Wiegman. Okay, well, Jill, have a good week.
Thanks.
You got any...
Back to school.
Back to school. Oof,
Back to school.
Back to reality.
Yep.
Someone actually messaged the other day saying they felt like they missed out on some important counter-press law and they didn't know how Gilly had ended up working in a school. And I thought, where have you been? So anyway, whoever that person was, yes, Gilly now works in a school. Full-time? Pretty much.
4.5.
Yeah, basically. Comes to us on a Monday morning very graciously. And you love it, sort of?
Yeah, and do you know what? I've got a good couple of teachers now listening to the pod.
Hey,
I love it.
Infiltrating.
So
PE and sort of other bits, isn't it?
just behaviour management.
Behaviour management. She's basically the school captain.
Basically.
Should get Mary Earps to answer.
Excuse me, they got me.
Jessy, maybe more Mary Earps stuff to come this week. Who knows?
More Mary Earps. I haven't actually even finished reading the book, so I've got to go and do my homework.
Okay, we'll be back on Thursday for Counterpress Book Club. Mary Earps all in. See you then.